What's up, guys? We got another game with the white pieces. I was playing unrated games and I forgot to change my settings back. So I got a rated game, but it was against a 1572 since I didn't put my settings back. Um, I started playing the moves and then I realized on the second move that I could have abandoned the game and I forgot, but it was too late by then, which is fine. I didn't want to lose 14 rating points if I lost the game, and I would only win 2 if I won the game. But I played it anyway. It turned out to be pretty smooth sailing. So how do we beat a 1600 without any issues, without them ever being better? Well, first we start off with dubious opening. Here he's playing the Polish defense, 1b5. So the most principled move here is going to be e4 because it unlocks an attack on the pawn as well as controls the center. So that's the no-brainer move. But I want to play a Stonewall against this 1600, regardless of what he does. So I develop my knight. He brings his bishop here. Again, you could still play e4, c4, knight out, but I play c3. Not principled, but I'm going for Stonewall. I create this triangle, and then my last pawn goes here. So he's not really doing much of anything yet. So I put my pawns in the center, and I get ready to do the typical setup. He gives me this check. I'm obviously not going to move my king, so I just block with the pawn, which is a tempo. So it also opens up his diagonal, but his queen is hit first. So he moves the queen, and now I just develop my knight, covering the diagonal, so no problems. It's not really scary, even though it looks scary on the light squares. He develops his knight, hitting this square twice. So I hit it twice and put my bishop there. He attacks the center with c5, but I already have c3 in, so I don't have to react to this. I can simply continue along my plans with castling. Um, in this game, instead of castling, I played a3. You don't need to play a3. Uh, it's completely unnecessary. It doesn't hurt though. I always like to throw it in just so when he pushes these, I can first take with this pawn. Um, the difference to me is if his pawn is here and he just takes and I take, now I have this isolated A pawn, an open B file. It looks a little weird. I'd rather have, when he goes here, I'd rather take, and then if he takes, it's fine. I could let him take, and then I have an open A and B file, marks open. It just looks a little cleaner. Um, I don't. It doesn't matter. It's just a move I do. Preference. Then he pushes, which is always a bad move because we can push e4 easily since there's no more pressure here. So obviously I retreat my bishop. He brings his knight in, which is just a one move threat. What does it threaten? It threatens the e3 pawn and nothing else. And if this pawn ever gets defended, you can just kick the knight. So the knight, it's kind of a waste of time. He should be developing his pieces. Someone tell the 1600 to develop his pieces. But this is under attack, so you actually can only defend it with king e2, which is dumb, and queen e2, which is smart. So queen e2. And now the knight has no business being there. I develop my queen. So he goes back. Awesome. Great waste of time. I got to improve my queen for free. So now it's my turn, and there's castling. That looks reasonable. Um, Also e4. Now in this structure looks really good. So I play it immediately because there's no reason to hurry castling. He's completely undeveloped. I'm not in any risk or danger. And now my center looks really nice. I like it. He develops his bishop modestly. um, and prepares castling. So what does white do? Well, white can do simple moves like castling, or perhaps e5, kicking the knight somewhere, gaining space, opening up the bishop, and preparing kingside attack. I castled first, just to get my king where it's going to end up anyway, and to get my rook in the f file, so that when I play e5, I can follow up with f5 and have a rook support. He plays d5, which I think a lot of lower rated players instinctively might do, grabbing the center, giving another square to your knight to develop, but it not only blocks this bishop, but allows me to play e5 without you having the ability to play d6 to undermine it. So I get it in for free, and it's so solid since the center's closed. I can get a free kingside attack because you played d5. So of course I don't take. Of course I don't take and open up his pieces. Of course I push, force the knight away, cut the board in half, and create a kingside attack with f5 coming next. And my pieces are beaming. And he has nothing on the queen side. No similar attack coming. So he moves his knight. It's a little precarious because the queen x-rays it. It's undefended. As well as I can kick it again. It's a weird move. I suppose you can move the knight out to open up the attack. But I just go f5. It's another attacking move. I think it makes more sense. Supported by the bishop. And here he took. I was happy that he took because now I take back with my bishop, developing here, attacking the knight. He moves the knight out of the attack but hits the bishop in return with tempo. Now I could go back to this diagonal, or I could go back to this diagonal. And it's not entirely clear, I guess. I just don't see what it's going to do on this diagonal unless I'm going to hit h7 in the future. I thought this diagonal looked a little more useful because since his bishop's dumb, he's undoubtedly going to play bishop c8 next or very soon. And I would rather have it there, so I just moved it back to h3. He, of course, does this, but it looks funny because he's all on the back rank. In this position, you could take the bishops and then continue along your plan. What else? You can... What else is there? I mean, I didn't take the bishop because I thought this guy doesn't know how to play chess, and the more pieces I had, I could just outplay him. So I did retreat it here. I don't know. Maybe I should have taken. It's hard to say. He brings his bishop out, and it's not a big deal. If he wants to trade a bishop for a knight, I'm even more okay with that, since I need more space for my pieces. So in this position, I wasn't exactly sure how to follow up because this knight can't move, this rook's not gonna move, this can't move, right? I don't want to touch the pawns, so that's all of these pieces that can't move. Um, Bishop can't really move, knight's pinned. So I have queen, rook, king moves, and my h pawn. I could hit the bishop for a turn. Maybe he goes back. I don't know, I could improve my king there. That seems okay. Uh, Moving my queen somewhere. Maybe queen f2 is an idea, but I don't really see the point. So I decide to move this rook. I actually have a crazy tactic here that I definitely didn't see, involving knight e4, saying if he takes, you take, hitting the rook. if he moves his knight to defend the rook, you can like take this and then take the bishop. But that's just crazy. Um, I played a normal move. I decided to lift up this rook for two reasons. One, I may want to double in the future. It also helps protect everything. And it creates a square for a knight to go knight f1, knight e3. That was my idea. I wanted to improve this knight. I also saw this was a path. I also thought rook f2 was a good improving move anyway. And I didn't see what black was doing because he doesn't have ideas. I mean, he can castle, but what's he doing after that? He has no pawn breaks. If he tries f6, I don't mind that. He'll always have this weakness. I'm feeling kettled. So I'll lift my rook. He castles. Fair enough. So here I have to improve this knight now. So I bring it back. It also temporarily opens up my bishop, which threatens to ruin his structure further, which I would definitely do. So he moves the knight out of that threat. It's still willy-nilly. I don't know about this move. It looks weird because it blocks the bishop's retreat diagonal. So once I saw it blocks the bishop's retreat diagonal, I said, now what happens if I play h3? If he goes back, I can win a piece by forking them. So it forces him to take, and I get the bishop pair for free like that. And I can move this my own bishop back to the diagonal. It'll be uncontested. That looks really nice. So I kick the bishop. He has to take. I improve my queen and double up on the f file. Now I'm ready to bring my pieces in the game. Now I really like my position. I've always liked it, but now it looks really good, or easier to play. So he defends the knight that was under attack, but it also creates dark square weaknesses. Um, and, and I'm not a big fan of this move in general. He's also hanging this pawn. So last move when I recaptured with the queen, I was hitting the knight and hitting this pawn because of the bishop. So he defends the knight. I take the pawn. Because why not? Central pawn. Free? Okay. And by doing this trade, I also get a passed pawn. My d pawn is passed. So I recapture with tempo. Rook has to move. And now all of his pieces are kind of bad. This one's the most forward. It's not doing much, but I said, let me make it worse and open up the f file for myself. You don't need to play g4. I imagine you can develop your bishops, your dark square bishop somewhere. I imagine you can improve your king. But I kick it anyway because I don't see too much of a downside. The only thing is it opens up the h4 square. That's the only thing I would notice, is that it gives him that square for either of his pieces, which I don't see as a big deal, particularly because he has no queen. Instead of hopping in there, he goes backwards. And now this f6 square, if I can control it, basically it's positional domination, because you'll see the board is just like, will be cut if I can get a rook here and trade all the minor pieces. And he just won't be able to do anything. So he moves his knight back, and now I have this knight here. It's done its job. I need to improve it. We stick it in this nice cubby hole that I created. Another reason I went g4 was to create this cubby hole for the knight, which looks nice. So in this position, he goes here, which you have to expect after you bring your knight out here. This is a very obvious response, which I didn't mind, because if he wants to give me his other bishop too, I'm perfectly okay with that. So I just defend the knight with the king, and I'm improving my king, and if he takes, I improve my king further for the endgame. He does take. Now my king is even further up the board, looking very nice. He attacks my pawns in front of my king, but I don't know what that does. So I ignore him, and I develop my last piece on move. Well, my rook is still there, so not my last piece. My last minor piece here, pinning this. Now this my bishop, it is uncontested, but it also is blocked by its own central pawns. So you could keep it, but the thing is also, not only am I up a passed pawn with a completely winning endgame, but his knight can now, if I didn't do this, his knight could go, let's say, to e6, blockade, stabilizing square, and I didn't want to give him any type of solidity like that. So I decided, let me take my useless bishop and take it for this knight, which could blockade, and that'll help me reach a winning endgame faster. So he moves his king and attacks my bishop. Now there's no point in moving my bishop here unless I'm going to take. So I took, and he took. And now this square is looking even more controllable. So you can plant a rook here immediately. I go g5 just to make, I don't know, it's not necessary. I guess the advantage is it keeps the H file closed, because if I put a rook here and he trades, um, then he can slide to the H file. It's not a big deal, but I feel like g5 is just, it's like saying you won't, even less counterplay for you, or no counterplay for you. He develops his minor piece because he has no other moves, controlling this square one last time. So now I can't put a rook there yet, unless I trade it for the knight. So I do the most common sense thing. And you can see how the structure is very nice, very solid. Bishop can travel through the pawns, rook's doubled. Harmony. Now there are 3 attackers on this pawn. Black should respond. He responds by moving the knight, which defends it as well as hits the bishop. Double whammy. But I can, bishops are, they're not clumsy like knights, so you can easily move them back and forth freely without worry. So I just move away from the attack. And now the knight looks dumb, right? So he has nothing else to do other than play a5. But what he missed was, this wasn't, my bishop to e4 wasn't a simple retreating move, which is what it looks like. It was actually sneak attack. I go here, secretly threatening to take this pawn. If he takes with the pawn, I win a rook. If he takes with the king, I go check. He goes back, I take the knight, and I win a pawn. So he goes here, and I snatch a pawn like a bandit. Now, again, he can't take this way because he loses a rook, so he recaptures with the king. But now I give check. He can't pick up this pawn because that's checkmate. I wonder how many of you would have picked up that pawn. So he goes back, and now I scoop the knight, and I won another pawn, this one. So I'm up 2 pawns, and now he has no minor pieces, so now I have full control over f6. So even if I'm playing Magnus Carlsen here, I win the game. So you know from here, or if you don't know, you should get to the point where you understand that this position is winning no matter what. And why? Because of the positional domination. He can never push this pawn. He can never break free. He's down material. You have this passed pawn. Your rooks are active. So many things. So this pawn is hit. He pushes it. So trades favor me. Now you don't capture with the c pawn and ruin your structure. You capture with the rook, maintaining order. He attacks this. You could go grabbing pawns like rook takes and rook takes, but there's also no need to let him do anything. So I just ignore it and stick my rook in here, really just boxing him in. And he has nothing to do. So he moves his rook again. Now I could snatch this pawn for free. Gives me some meaningless check. And of course you hit the rook because it comes with tempo, which gives you a free move after that. So he moves his rook, takes his pawn. Now I didn't care about that pawn. Because if you try to defend it, like here, then he could just keep checking you from behind as long as you try to defend it. So jettison the pawn. You have this. You don't need that pawn, right? And it's just completely winning. You just trade the rooks or push the pawns. And because the rook covers the king's file, there's no checks. So I just put pressure on this pawn, making sure his other rook can't move, so he's paralyzed. And now he has nothing to do but to wait to die. See? H4, waiting. I attack it because if he tries to defend it, with this, his rook is even more passive. So he just doesn't defend it. And I don't actually take it. It was more of like a bluff. I just push my b pawn because what can he really do? And again, if he goes to trade rooks, any trades are good for me because my pawns will just run up the board. Any king and pawn endgame, you only need one pass pawn, not three. So now it's over. I just push my pawn. His king is doing nothing. I push my pawn. I push my pawn. And now I can't immediately push because he'll win it. But I have infinite moves since he's stuck. Right? So it doesn't matter what he does. And he resigns here. Good game. I was always better. No trouble. Of course, you want to, against this opening, you probably want to play this. He'll probably defend. And then you could play a normal game. Maybe something like this. And maybe he'll move one of these pawns. I feel like this is a more normal setup slash game. I don't know what theory is against the Polish opening. And then maybe c5 here. Okay, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Good game. We got our 2 points. Another win. It's how you take care of a lower rated player. We keep going.